Alright guys, welcome back again to more Misericorde. That's very nice to hear. I think this might be the only time I've ever knocked her off her balance. I could hear it in her voice, even though it was muffled by wood and echoed through stone. Her commanding tone softened and her voice grew thinner. Have you ever read any plays? Plays? No. I've only read about amphitheaters in passing. But you understand the concept, surely. It's very Roman. Huh, Greek, but yes. People dressing up and performing? I'm not sure how to feel about it. It feels a little dangerous. Spiritually, I mean. Well, if it makes you feel any better. Well, if it makes you feel any better, a lot of plays since ancient Greek times have been about the Bible. That's nice, I suppose. Ooh, careful, haha. Don't let His Holiness Innocent III hear you say that. Is that bad? What did you just trick me into saying? I wouldn't worry about it. He's been dead for, 300 years. I'm sure Sixtus won't mind. He's much kinder to the theater. That wasn't funny. It's like you're goading me into blaspheming. I'm sorry, I sort of assumed you would know who the Pope is. I receive very little news in here. If it isn't a matter of complete catastrophe, I probably won't hear about it. As long as the Pope is the Pope and the nation is still part of the Church, news is not exactly material to me. What nation are we in? England. Do you know what year it is? 1482. Come now, what do you take me for? What month is it? Oh dear. I mean, that's not too relevant to me. Mostly, I just look outside to tell what season it is. I get a special meal on Christmas. That much I know. I brought it to you last year. How often have you visited me now? I'll never tell. Have it your way. What month is it though? October. Samhain, to be specific. Oh, stop. Has anyone ever pulled any mischief night pranks on you? Mercifully, not to my knowledge. I get plenty of mischief from you, though. Fair play. Listen, I need to move on, but I'll bring you a play to read next time. I know. Just the one. I know I can trust you with handling a book with care at the very least. Alright, I'd like that, I think. Can I ask you something? Of course. Would it be alright if I opened this? The squint? No. I'm really sorry. Is that another rule? It is, but I earnestly cannot. It locks from that side. I can't open it myself, it needs the key. Of all the luck. I should have thought of that last Christmas. And really, I'm not meant to look through. Of course. You're a very good rule follower, too. Then again, if you were to bring me a book, I suppose you'd have to open it, wouldn't you? And I wouldn't be able to do much about it if you saw me taking the book, would I? That is true. That sounds like a good idea to me in that case. Alright then. Promise you'll read it? Yeah? Of course. Lovely. I can't wait to discuss it with you. That's the important part of reading scripture included. Don't ever forget that. I'll try not to. There's a good girl. Anyway, goodbye for now. I'm late for Vespers. Goodbye. I didn't know the anchoress was, I wouldn't say stowed away, but in a room to herself and kept there throughout how many years of her life. That's gotta be something. That'd be hard. She doesn't even have her own bathroom. Like, they literally have to bring a bucket to her. She never did bring me that play. Ah, what was the point? It's not her fault, I suppose. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. When I went to sleep that night, all I could hear was an incessant scratching. I should have known that the devil wanted me. He had been trying to claw his way into my cell my whole life. An elaborate plan to get me was taking shape. Scratch, scratch. It echoed down the hall and throughout my cell for what seemed like hours. Shaving away at the walls. breaking down the barrier that kept me safe here for God knows how many years, inside my head. I dreamed that I was trapped in a small box, pounding and beating against the lid. What? Are those candles? Oh no, no, those are the nuns. I should have known. I should have known. I should have known. Every sign pointed to something being wrong. That nagging feeling in your gut when you can tell something is amiss. You should listen to it. Every time I've acted against it, I've regretted the decision. For example, usually the food I received in here was actually quite nice. I even looked forward to the fish. But once I received some fish on a Sunday that smelled terrible. I was so hungry, but I ate it anyway. I was sick for days, naturally. Do you understand? This is how my life works. I jump in without thought when a moment's hesitation would save me. Like some of the other nuns might have said once upon a time, I never think more than a move ahead. Like a stubborn child that was succumb to every whim, every fleeting desire. I read so much scripture. I lived a blessed life. I knew better. And if I could do it, if I could fall so easily without another soul in that cell, not but stone and paper at my fingertips, what could I do if I was set loose on the wilder world? For the next few weeks, I was alone again. I must admit, it stung just a bit. I really was looking forward to reading that play despite my better judgment. I dutifully continued my work in the meantime, brushing up on scripture, transcribing scripture, and quoting scripture to the odd visitor. I had a few inquiries, but for once I could immediately tell that they weren't who I was waiting for. I'm not sure who they were, nor did I particularly care. I just knew they weren't her. The scratching continued. My dreams became more and more desperate. Sometimes, I broke through the wood surrounding me, but whenever I did, my mouth would fill with cloth. I would wake up choking. Oh yes, I mentioned transcription. That was the other half of my work. As well as being a font of wisdom, I helped spread the gospel through writing. I'd copy page after page, book after book. I even did the illumination. I must admit that was my favorite part. It wasn't particularly good at it, but I was proud of it. Oh, it's getting hard to read this text in this type of background too, all white. Sometimes I'd imagine someone opening a book and being moved by all the words, but the illumination, that gold leaf I carefully placed, really inspiring them. Pride. Stupid, stupid. Anyway, these books would pile up in my cell until they were collected at the turn of every season by the visiting bishop. When I heard a knock on the door, I assumed it was him. You're early. I've not yet finished with Matthew. This is your superior. I'm not here to collect your books. Oh. Okay, I very rarely heard from the superior. She would, on rare occasions, deliver important news. I remember her coming to tell me about a war in Spain I couldn't possibly wrap my head around. Now that I think about it, I vaguely remember her informing me that His Holiness Sixtus IV had been confirmed. It's stupid. If only I'd remembered that when she was at my window. I need your help with a sensitive matter. Well, that's why I'm here. May I come in? No. No, that's not allowed? I was worried it might come to this. I understand under normal circumstances that would be the case, but I am the superior. Nobody can rightfully unseal this cell but the bishop will perform my rites. He won't be here for several weeks at least. And I doubt very much that he'd let you in here. But even if he did, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. I don't think you understand. There are rites. This is a tomb. I am dead to the outside world, a vessel for purest prayer, and... A woman has been murdered. My stomach dropped. I made the connection immediately. It couldn't have been... Murdered? Her? The rest of this conversation continued through gritted teeth and hurried whispers. Murder. Under my protection, in these very halls. Who killed her? A stable boy from a nearby village has been blamed. He's currently being held in the hospitalum on suspicion of the act, and will be dealt with accordingly when the time comes. Good. So why do you need my help? Why do you need to open this door? I'm happy to offer any spiritual counsel you require, but if the bishop were to arrive and I had no answer as to why his sister is dead. But you do have an answer. You just said so yourself. No. Mother Superior, do not... I felt helpless, dumbfounded. The door swung outward, and I looked upon the first human being I'd seen up close in God only knows how long. Perhaps 2 decades? Holy crap, really? I had plenty of illustrations of men and women in my illuminated tomes. I'd see glimpses of hands passing through the squint. I'd occasionally notice what I thought were people walking around the hills I could see from my window. But now there was a full person in front of me, draped in black. She looked weathered, and even though I hadn't gazed upon another face in years and years, I immediately recognized the expression she wore. A deep, gnawing concern. I was too angry to care, however. You! I am sorry. This is unacceptable! You violated a sacred rite! It brings me no pleasure to do so, believe me. But it is vitally important that you leave this cell. At this point, I had already backed myself up against the far wall, as far away from the door as possible. Stop crying, please, and step away from the window. It was hard to speak through my own ugly sobbing. The superior gently closed the door behind her, as if that would make me feel any better. Any sense of comfort had gone rushing out of the threshold as soon as the seal was broken. She sat on the bed and beckoned for me to do the same. I refused. As you said, I do have an answer for the bishop whenever he arrives, but I'm not certain it's the right one. You're not? The young man was indeed found sneaking around the convent the morning the body was discovered, and he had no compelling excuse as to why that would be. But something just doesn't feel right. Everyone agrees it was him. You're not making any sense. Everyone agrees it was him, so that's just it. That's a little odd, don't you think? Every last sister here immediately in agreement that a stable hand, a complete outsider, was responsible? A little convenient, no? I'm earnestly not sure what you're suggesting. Why would they lie? What reason would you have not to trust them? And then she laughed. A single bitter hollow wheeze of a laugh. Your being kept in here has made you more naive than I thought. You will learn, I suppose. I very much doubt that. If you think I'm about to throw away a life's work, your sealed cell is exactly why I need your help. You are now the single person I can completely trust in this abbey. Every other sister more or less has had free run of the place except for you. I need you to join the congregation to investigate my hunch that something is amiss. Oh, they're making her the detective, more or less. I like that, because she's the only one that's always been locked up in a room this whole time, so she can't be suspicious of anything. Or she can't be held in suspicion. You're asking me to spy on people? How dare you? How dare you break into my cell and demand this of me? I won't have it. Please, can you not feel it? There's something wrong in this place. Very wrong. Deep in the walls. I tried to ignore it. Tamp it down for so long. And now this. Someone's died, my child. I should have done more to protect her. I could have watched closer. I could have not given up whenever I felt the creeping dread. There's something dark at work here, and I have worked too long and too hard to let mystery like this bury my abbey's reputation for good. This is my penance. You can help me right a grievous wrong. I don't want to send a potentially innocent young man to die. Catherine wouldn't have wanted that. Catherine. That was her name then. The woman who had come to talk to me so many times. Catherine. It felt like I had learned the shape of the thing that had shattered, and all of a sudden I felt obligated to help put it back together. Alright. She had been deep in thought as I chewed things over. I said alright. I will help. Good. Good. Tomorrow you'll join the regular congregation. I'll make sure the other sisters bring you up to speed on the proceedings so you can become one of them as soon as possible. I'm sure I don't need to emphasize this, but just to be clear, you are not to let on what it is you're doing. Won't it be obvious? I waited some time before coming here for that precise reason. But if anyone asks, you are our new chronicler. Chronicler? Yes. That was Catherine's position before. Well. And you are clearly a skilled copyist. I've told the sisters that you are a perfect fit for the position, and everyone seems amenable. We won't have to spend months upon months hoping a new oblate will be qualified and want to roll. And none of the others wanted to be the new chronicler? No, they did not. She stood up and strolled towards the door, keys in hand. Tomorrow then. I'll send Catherine to escort you to the morning service. But a small flicker of realization played over her face, and she offered a weak smile. With a K. The Catherine we lost was with a C. Ah. She stood on the threshold, her apologetic smile wavering. Well, tomorrow. Alright, the superior wasn't bad. You know, she wants to do right by the what do you call? The abbey. The monastery? I need to remember that word. All I could do was cry. I've been locked in here for my whole life, and now I was being told to leave my legacy behind. I've been comfortable here, happy with humble servitude. Dead to the world, but never to myself, peacefully unaware of anything outside the walls of my cell. I had no need to care about trivial fleeting matters. My life was God's. I was angry at the superior for breaking down the barrier and tainting my meticulously organized little world. But I was angry at whoever had taken those conversations from me. Whoever had taken that play from me. So that's what I chose to focus on. How I chose to interpret events. Stupid. Interpretation was never how I was taught to process scripture. But I ignored the fact that the superior was the one who had stepped through the door in lieu of the desire to seek some nebulous form of justice. I took my evening meal from the squint without word. My head felt like it had been filled with smoke. My eyes watered at the sensation, and I became more aware of my palms than I had ever been before. I couldn't keep from wiping them against my thigh incessantly, fidgeting before each page as I struggled to find some piece of comfort in one of my books. I couldn't find one. Pathetic, wasn't I? 20-some-odd years spent reading scripture to the point where I could feasibly recite it without even glancing at the page, but nothing leapt out at me as I flipped through the tomes. Words barely registered as words. Many people hold a passage or particular psalm to heart. I myself did not. I had been so immersed in the Bible for so long, it was difficult to single out any one piece of text that truly spoke to me at this moment. Usually, I could chalk this up to the essence of my position. I had no need for a favorite passage when my life was devoted to all passages. I had simply never held any one piece of wisdom in higher esteem than any other. A holistic way to think about the book until I found myself in need. I tried searching for the meaning in the text I had been copying before the superior barged in, but the letters might as well have been Greek. I felt sick to my stomach, and racked with worries, guilt, and rage. I didn't want to feel anymore, so I tore off my clothes and rolled on into my straw mattress and closed my eyes as tight as I could. I mean, the good in this is that she can expose herself to the outside world, more or less, or at least more of the area she's in. I woke up rasping for air through sloshing liquid. Instinctively, rolling onto my side, I splattered dark bile in a streak across the mattress and onto the floor. I could feel more coming and scrambled to my hands and knees, launching myself out of bed like a wild dog. I tried standing, but couldn't. I heaved more of a vial of liquid onto the stone floor with a horrible gurgle. Why is this starting to sound like Fate's Day? Weakly, I pulled myself up using the chair that served the writing desk across from the bed, but not before retching again. Streaks of bile flew across the copy of Matthew I had been transcribing, still open on the reading desk. That's gross. I groaned and launched myself from the chair towards the window, hoping to be able to get the rest of the foul substance I could still feel bubbling in my throat outside. Skip these nasty details? No, I don't think so. I spent years listening to everything others had to say, and I must admit I'm very much enjoying having someone listen to me. You'll permit me this relatively small indulgence. I'm honestly fine with it. It's a little gross, but fine. Besides, I lived it, and you're just hearing the story. I'm sure you can manage. She became a little bit more of a joker when she got out. I flung open the wooden window cover just in time to heave the last of that toxic bile onto the dusk. I leaned my head out for a few moments. I could hear the faint splash of the stuff as it hit the grass below. I panted for a bit, attempting to regain my composure. Eventually, I was able to stop wheezing and breathe somewhat normally. You're familiar with the concept of humor, yes? Yeah, it's something you developed over the time that you started telling me this story of yours. The four elements reside in our bodies manifested of various fluids. Oh, don't sound so incredulous. I learned a little bit about the world before I took the oath to be an anchoress. The four humors are elements that make up the earthly selves. Okay, you're telling me a different type of humor. Alright. The balance is very delicate, as I understand. So delicate that practically nobody is perfectly balanced. Blood is one of the humors, and determines our sanguinity. Ooh, that's a word. Yellow bile is a little nasty. People with a lot of yellow in their system are short-tempered, aggressive. Some would say confident, but I'd say a little cruel. There's phlegm too. It naturally generates in old age, but many younger people have an excess of it as well. You can tell because they're wise, calm, and reserved. I wouldn't mind having an excess of phlegm, honestly. As funny as the word is to say. Sadly, I'm full of black bile instead. Does that surprise you? I'm joking. Of course it wouldn't surprise you. Black bile determines how melancholic you are. That night, after a whirlwind of horrible news and negative thoughts, I was simply overloaded with black bile. My poor little body couldn't handle it, and it had to expel some. I suppose I've always had quite a bit of black bile, now that I think of it. My hair is black, which is a common sign that someone is full of the stuff. I never felt a particularly melancholy until that night, however. Being shut away from worldly influences had spared me from ever allowing my humoric balance to color my emotions. There was no going back after that, sadly. Anyway, I managed to stand up straight again. I hobbled back over to the bed and rummaged around underneath to find the brush I had been given years ago, to clean up the occasional ink spill or dropped supper plate. Along with the small pail I had for washing, it would have had to make for scrubbing up the horrid mess I'd made. The cell had its own faucet, mercifully, which dribbled lukewarm water into the bucket I held with trembling hands. It took far longer than I'd hoped to erase any trace of bile from the flagstone. By the time I finished, my knees and back ached. I should have at least rolled up my habit to provide some cushion for my knees, but I wasn't thinking straight. I was in so much dull pain by the time I stood up that noticing the dirty book sitting on the writing desk was just not something I could handle. I'm not proud to admit that I practically tore the damn thing from its plinth and stomped over to the window, still nude as anything, to hurl into the night sky. I must have looked like some crazed Olympian discus thrower. I regretted it instantly. Not only was it a childish thing to do, but... Whoa, what is that? I swear I saw someone looking up at me. I scurried away from the window as fast as I could. I flung myself into bed, with my face buried in my pillow. I scrunched my eyes closed. I could feel what it felt like spike being driven through my head, and I was painfully aware of every bone in my body. I ached, I wailed, and I despaired, and then finally, sleep. I wonder, does she have a fever? That's the only reason I can think of that she started throwing up out of nowhere. Aggressively as such, too. The next morning, I woke up feeling worse than if I hadn't slept at all. The aches may have subsided somewhat, but pain that had afflicted my head had merely reduced to a low-level buzz. That made every thought take twice as long to finish. I meekly stood out of bed and attempted to wash myself with water from the bucket. Although I had wasted most of it scrubbing up the bile the previous night, I wanted to toss the excess out the window so I could ask for it to be refilled later. I could still see my copy of Matthew on the ground beneath the window, an embarrassing reminder of last night's behavior. Halfway through tossing the water out, I remembered the horrible apparition I had seen outside the night before. That woke me up. I turned away from the window as quickly as I had thought the night before, even though there was nothing to see out there in the light of day. I simply didn't want to think about it anymore. Nervously, I slipped on my habit, clipped on my wimple, put on my cowl. The superior had told me that somebody, Catherine, would come to collect me before the morning service. Morning service. Ah, I've forgotten matins. Are you decent in there? Yes. Good, good. Just a moment. God, which key was it? Well, look at you. She immediately reached out and yanked on my cowl, adjusting it to suit her liking. You look awful. This won't do. Superior would have my head. I looked up at her, bewildered. Sorry, poor taste. She licked her thumb before pressing it against my forehead and tucking in an unruly cowlick under my wimple. I bristled instinctively and pulled away. I was not particularly pleased that my first physical contact in over 20 years was this. Woman rubbing a wet digit across my temple. Hey! I'm just trying to make you presentable. For heaven's sake, I was busy all night and still managed to look my best today. She grabbed my cheeks and peered into my eyes, looking simultaneously deep in thought and maddeningly aloof. After hemming and hawing for a moment, she licked another finger and tucked in the rest of the hair sticking out from my wimple quite rudely. Then after squeezing and stretching my cheeks a little, she gave them a light, frosty slap. Apparently satisfied, she clapped me on the shoulders and patted down my robe to straighten it. That'll have to do. We're gonna have to work on your face though. It's absolutely colorless. You hit me! It gets the blood flowing, my dear. I knew you were gonna be a mess, but I wasn't expecting things to be this bad. This was bewildering. You're Catherine, right? The one and only. And your name is... Hedwig. Adorable. Now let's get along. The last thing I need is talking to from the superior. She took a moment to admire her handiwork, eyeing me up and down. And with that, she turned on her heel and began to stride down the hallway. I couldn't follow her. I'd never left this cell. I stood upon the threshold. I felt as though I were rocking back and forth on the deck of a ship. I closed my eyes for a moment, perhaps hoping that I'd open them and be back where I was just a few weeks ago. Sheltered, sealed, and content. Are you coming? I savored a few precious last seconds. Yes. I'm ready now. Off we go then. Wow. We're finally leaving. Interesting. I've never seen the hallway outside my cell before. It was quite long, and Catherine was walking briskly towards the end. We have a way to go yet, I'm afraid. Right here, if you'd please. We passed a set of windows with a little statue of the Madonna and child nestled between them. We took another turn after that, into a hall, equally as long as the one my cell was located in. I caught the briefest glimpse of the cloister out of the window. Up ahead are the dorms where the rest of us live. And the Misericorde on the right, just before those. Then the door next to that is the library. Left of the stairs just before the dorms, there's a good girl. Oh, my god. I puffed up a little. I know how to use stairs, thank you very much. And stop cursing, that's twice now I've counted. Go on then, after you. I gingerly put one foot on the first step down. Very good. See? One more. I began to descend the staircase very slowly. I instinctively held my hands out for balance, until I felt Catherine firmly gripping them and planting them at my sides. You just walk down them normally. No! This is really precious. I'll race you to the bottom. But she had already casually strolled down to the landing. She pointed to the staircase that descended the other way as I wobbled my way down to her. There's more this way, just so you know. You are being perfectly horrible. Aren't I just? Hurry up, you've got places to be and people to meet. I don't know, I like Catherine with a K. She's pretty fun. Like, you would think most sisters would be pretty strict, you know? And Hedwig has an excuse for that. We came to a foyer with a door leading out into the cloister. The sunlight creeping in was simultaneously daunting and enticing. It's a good thing we don't get much heat here. Your skin looks like it might cook in the sun. She ushered me to the door, now allowing me the same moment I had taken leaving the threshold of my cell. The cloister was a rectangle of grass surrounded by stone arches.